We all love a legendary comeback, and Degree Original Cool Rush is back and better than ever. Cool Rush isn't just a scent, it's a movement, a fan favorite that delivers bold, fresh vibes and all-day sweat protection. Whether you have a man that spends hours in the gym, heads into the office early, or is just trying to stay fresh on a long day, Cool Rush has their back. Head to your local Walmart or Target and grab Degree Cool Rush, the fan favorite scent from the world's #1 antiperspirant brand.
You know, it's Halloween. I guess everyone's entitled to one good scare.
What's up, everyone? I'm your host, Will, and you're listening to the 20th episode of One Good Scare, the show where we explore our favorite horror movies. I know, it's been about a month since our last episode. Guys, life has been lifing the past few weeks, but I am glad to be back and to have you join me as we explore one of my favorite horror movies. Side note, it's not one of the best horror movies ever made, but it is one of my favorites, 1987's The Gate. Before we dive in, though, don't forget you can follow One Good Scare on Instagram at One Scare Pod and on TikTok at One Good Scare Pod. Make sure to follow and leave a comment or two. I love interacting, I love discussing, I even love debating, so long as it's in good faith. Also, be sure to leave a 5-star review on Spotify and Apple Pods. It lets me know you're enjoying the show, and I promise you that goes a long way to keeping it going. And remember, my goal with One Good Scare is not to replace your viewing experience, it's to enhance it. So if you haven't seen The Gate, or even if it's been a while, my strong encouragement is to do that first and then come back and give the show a listen. Of course, if you'd rather listen than watch, I appreciate that as well. Just remember, one good scare is one gigantic spoiler. Alright, let's dive into what I think is a terribly fun and enjoyable horror movie, The Gate. Okay, so right off the bat, The Gate is one of those movies that you either love or hate, and I think it's because it feels more like a kid's horror movie than anything else. IMDb lists it at a 6.1 out of 10, which isn't terrible, though honestly it's surprisingly high for what this movie is, and Rotten Tomatoes has it at a 36% tomato meter and a slightly higher 46% popcorn meter, indicating that while critics may not have loved this movie, moviegoers thought maybe more highly of it. That said, The Gate is more a, no pun intended, gateway horror movie. It's the kind of movie I'd recommend to someone who either isn't a huge horror fan, but is interested in getting started, or someone who wants to watch a horror movie that is simply entertainment and doesn't require multiple viewings. I'll admit for myself, I often put this on while doing work, and it sort of plays out as background noise while I'm doing other things. Now that doesn't mean it's a bad movie. Even now, nearly 40 years after it was released, it's super entertaining. And it's a short watch, coming in at 1 hour and 22 minutes of actual runtime. And maybe surprisingly, the young cast, who were mostly preteens and teens at the time, they do a really great job throughout the film. Look, it definitely won't win any awards, and a 6.1 out of 10 feels a little high. But if you're looking for a movie that's fun to watch, doesn't require much thought, then you can't go wrong with The Gate. Before we dive in, let me give a quick reminder. I'll do my best to keep the cut-ins to a minimum, because I have a special guest, Josh Bell, who is going to join me in the second half of the show to discuss all things related to The Gate. Alright, enough of me going on and on. It's time to settle in and turn down the lights as we explore a fun and entertaining horror movie, The Gate. The movie opens with eerie synth music, and the gate blasting onto the screen, followed by the opening credits. We then watch a boy riding his bicycle up to his house. He opens the door and calls out to his parents and sister, but no one responds. He then hears giggling upstairs and cautiously goes up as creepy music plays behind him. He knocks on his sister's door, her name is Al, and walks in where he sees the Thunderbolt sitting on her desk. It's a model rocket. Then he hears music playing downstairs, and startled, turns and heads to the living room where the television is playing a music video. Suddenly, he hears a distorted voice from another room. and walking into the kitchen, he finds it a mess. Someone ate dinner and left everything on the table. Then, the kitchen door opens, and we see a treehouse in the backyard. As he walks towards it, we hear the voice of a young child say, "Papa." Thunder booms overhead as he climbs the ladder to the treehouse, the music hitting a crescendo as he reaches the landing. He then discovers the voices coming from a baby doll, saying "Papa" over and over. Suddenly, and without warning, lightning strikes the tree, sending it crashing to the ground. The boy, Glenn, wakes up from his nightmare. Except, it sort of isn't, because he finds a crew chopping up the fallen tree in his backyard. He walks outside and looks around at the shattered treehouse and finds a geode on the ground, seemingly from a smoking hole directly in front of him. We then see Glenn talking to his friend Terry as they dig up the hole in search of more geodes. Terry says they can get good money for a big one. Terry then steps onto the back of a shovel, and the hole gives way, nearly sending him into it. Smoke billows, and we see that it's a large hole going straight down without end. As Glenn hands Terry the shovel, he flinches back and pulls a large splinter from his palm and drops it into the hole. Suddenly, we hear strange noises from somewhere inside, and Terry lifts out a much larger geode. We then see Glenn's sister Al taking a box of trash when Glenn runs up and pulls up a model rocket. Terry, for his part, pulls out a magnetic sketch pad. Al then heads out to go shopping with two friends, and Glenn calls to her and asks about launching the Thunderbolt. Terry says they don't need her, and Glenn points to the roof where a previous unsupervised launch burnt a hole. Meanwhile, Al, who wants to be called Alexandra, hops in a car to go to the mall with friends, while the family dog Angus sits near the hole in the backyard. Suddenly, we see flying insects coming up from the hole. Terry catches one and locks it in a jar while Glenn messes with the model rocket. Terry asks Glenn how long he thinks the bugs can live without air, and Glenn says that's cruel. Sometime later, Glenn's father discovers the hole in the yard and lectures the kids about being irresponsible. Al pleads her case about being able to stay the weekend without a babysitter. Their parents want them to ensure they'll be responsible while they're gone. Al says she can take care of it, and the parents agree. Glenn, though, is grounded for the weekend, and after dinner, he needs to fill in the hole. Later that night, Glenn is lying in bed, and his father comes in and tells him that the hole in the backyard is weird. He says Terry told him that a workman got killed while they were building the house, and that his body was sealed up in one of the walls. His dad says that Terry has had a tough time since his mom died the year before, that he's angry inside, and for Glenn to remember that if Terry gets destructive or tries to scare him. After his dad leaves the room and closes the door, Glenn hears a strange scratching from somewhere in the dark, but brushes it off and tries to get some sleep. The next morning, the parents are instructing Al and Glenn, and they pull off for their weekend getaway, leaving the two to fend for themselves. On the way out, their mother tells them no parties, and the scene immediately shifts to that night, where Al is throwing a party. The camera pans through the crowd as Al cleans up messes and Angus sneaks chips. Meanwhile, upstairs, Glenn and Terry are trying to crack open the geode, and Terry gives up when Glenn hits it with a hammer, cracking it open, sending out smoke, and revealing a shimmering inside. Then, Glenn discovers strange markings on the magnetic doodle pad. Glenn reads the words, Aka, Kuto, Ala, Ita, and we see more smoke billowing from the hole in the backyard, and hear moaning coming from inside. Glenn and Terry then sneak downstairs as a guy tells a creepy story to the partygoers. One girl cuts in and asks if the group has ever done a levitation. Glenn asks Terry if he believes in it, and he says yes, as the girl leads the group in a levitation ritual. It doesn't work, but one of the guys calls Glenn and Terry over since they're lighter. Glenn sits in the chair as the girl leads the ritual, and has everyone else concentrate. They follow instructions, and suddenly, Glenn begins to levitate, right into the light on the ceiling. He runs away crying, and Terry follows him. Glenn has locked himself in the bedroom as Terry and Al knock on the door outside. They tell stories of when they cried to get him to unlock the door, and when he does, he tells them he wants to call their parents. Al refuses and says Terry can spend the night. Later that night, Terry gets up to use the bathroom, and Glenn watches the bugs in the jar cast shadows on his wall. He pulls his blinds down and turns to see scary shadows all over the place. Meanwhile, Terry steps out of the bedroom and walks past Angus, who is asleep on the landing. Suddenly, a light is seen downstairs, and when Terry looks at the front door, he sees his mother dressed in white, arms outstretched, saying, "I love you. I need you. I've missed you so much." Terry walks downstairs and hugs his mother, while upstairs, Glenn sees what appears to be handprints moving inside his bedroom wall. He backs away as the strange shapes continue. Downstairs, Terry is embracing his mother, when suddenly, he pulls away and sees that he's holding Angus, who is now dead. He screams, and Al and Glenn step out of their rooms as Terry kneels next to Angus's body. The next morning, Terry expresses his condolences as he prepares to leave. He then walks into his house, which is quiet and empty, and finds a note from his dad on the fridge. He's out of town for work. Meanwhile, Glenn is reeling from Angus's death and asks if Al is going to call their parents. She says no, and Glenn says he will call himself. The doorbell rings, and Glenn attempts to call them, but Al stops him before he can dial the number. Back at Terry's house, he is jamming to heavy metal music, and he mouths the interlude about dark gods who rule the earth. He flips through the record booklet and compares some of the symbols to those found on the magnetic doodle pad. Then, the record starts playing backwards. Terry seems to be putting two and two together. Back at Glenn's house, Al's friends are trying to convince her to go out to the beach, but Glenn interrupts and asks her about Angus. He goes back and forth with Al's friends, and they all prep to leave for the beach. Eric agrees to take Angus to the animal shelter, and they leave as Glenn watches from his bedroom window. He then pulls out the box for a model rocket and tosses it aside. Then he heads downstairs into the backyard, where he unplugs the bug zapper. Then, he notices the hole is open and smoking. He rushes inside and opens the front door and runs into Terry. The two then inspect the hole, and Terry says he knows what it means. You got demons. The two cover the hole with wooden boards from the fallen treehouse, and then Terry says he has something to show Glenn. Meanwhile, Eric pulls up to the animal control center, but it's closed, and he pulls away with Angus in the front seat. Back at Terry's house, he tells Glenn about the band Sacrifix, and he tells him they're trying to warn them about the demons. Terry says they made one album, then they died in a plane crash. He then points out a demon lord and that the lyrics tell them how to summon a demon. He says there's a certain time when the constellations are aligned and that the gate can be opened. He says he checked, and the time is now. Glenn doesn't believe him, but Terry says they completed the ritual. He hands Glenn the magnetic doodle pad and says the strange words mean, "Gods of darkness, breeders of chaos, come forth and take possession of this vile world." He says they need blood and points to Glenn's splinter. Terry says everything is in the book of the Sacrifix album, the hole, the geode, and the levitation. Terry says it proves they're in trouble. Then he says the most important part of the ritual is the sacrifice, and the sacrifice can be an animal. Back at Glenn's, Eric gathers Angus from the car and rings the doorbell, but no one is home. Glenn asks why they haven't seen demons, and Terry says it's because they haven't completed a sacrifice and that the gate is only partially open. Terry then plays the record backwards and says it tells you how to close the gate. Eric peeks in a window but sees no one, and as he prepares to leave, he notices the hole in the backyard. In the next scene, we see Eric's hands are covered in dirt as he pulls away from Glenn's home. Meanwhile, Terry and Glenn are reciting the ritual to close the gate. Glenn suggests doing it one more time, but Al walks over and interrupts. Terry says they accidentally summoned demons, but that they're gone now. Al asks what's under the wood, and they pull it up to reveal a closed ground and no hole. Al then shows Glenn a gift she got at the mall, a model rocket. As they walk away, the lock on the wooden door covering the hole begins to move back and forth. As Glenn and Al set up the model rocket, Terry reads from the Sacrifix album booklet. Glenn lights the rocket, and it launches successfully, and the screen then fades to black. And this is the end of Act 1. Alright, so real quick, there isn't much action in Act 1, and nearly all of it is a setup for Acts 2 and 3. But a lack of action doesn't mean nothing is happening. In fact, I'd argue that the setup is super important in this movie, if only because of the era this was filmed. In 1987, the nation was in the thick of the Satanic Panic, a strange time when people were obsessed with Satanism, satanic cults, and child sacrifices. We'll explore this a bit more in the second half of the show, but in this opening act, The Gate does a terrific job of giving us the context of the Satanic Panic. It is true that people believed hard rock music contained satanic lyrics and encoded messages, and that by listening to it, you could let the devil into your life. And music wasn't the only target. Games like Dungeons & Dragons were also cast as satanic. Listen, the Satanic Panic was one of the most batshit crazy times in American history. And that's really saying a lot because, well, American history is loaded with batshit crazy times. More on that a little later. Okay, let's jump into Act 2. Act 2 opens with Glenn, Al, and Terry playing cards when the doorbell rings. Terry looks at Glenn and says, "Demons aren't going to ring the doorbell," as Al's friends walk downstairs. As the girls walk away, Terry and Glenn are in a closet looking through stuff when Terry pulls out a shotgun. As a laundry basket falls from a top shelf, Glenn finds the Thunderbolt, a huge model rocket. Al's friends pick on Glenn and Terry, and they go back and forth talking shit to each other. Later on, Glenn and Terry sit in Glenn's room, while Al and her friends are asleep next door. For a time, Glenn flips through the Sacrifix book, but then sets it aside and goes to sleep. Suddenly, we are taken out to the hallway of the home, where the silhouette of a demon creature moves along the wall. Glenn is startled awake by a noise outside, and he whispers for Terry to wake up, but has no luck. Glenn pulls down his window blind, and suddenly it rolls up again. This time, it's covered in bugs, and the window immediately blows open. Glenn is fighting with bugs as he steps out of his room and calls for Al. Glenn screams that the monsters are in his room, but when she opens the door, there's no monster in there, only a broken window. Al calls for Terry, and we see him tossing and turning in his bed. But then he shows up behind Glenn and Al, and they realize it's not Terry under the covers. She pulls them back and sees Angus's dead body laying on the mattress. Suddenly, a demonic voice growls from under the bed, and a large monstrous hand appears, yanking Al to the ground. The three struggle as the monster pulls with multiple arms. They break free and run downstairs, and Glenn yanks open the door to find his parents standing outside. He runs to them, but his father lifts him up and growls, "You've been bad." Glenn struggles and rips his father's face off, turning it to goo and pus and gunk as they both laugh maniacally. He runs back inside, and they all realize something is very wrong. Suddenly, all the doors in the house slam shut and the lights turn off. They walk slowly to the back door, and Al lights a few candles while Terry looks into the backyard. Al opens the back door and says she will go out first. She steps into the dark yard, and Glenn yells for her to come back. As she walks quietly, we find several small demons, no taller than her knee, scurrying around her. Then, one of her friends opens the living room blinds to find a demon staring in at her from outside. Terry and Glenn yell for Al to get back to the house immediately, and she hustles as the demons run behind her. Glenn slams the door on a demon's arm, and it falls off and turns into little demon parts that scurry under the doorframe. Suddenly, the kitchen telephone rings, and Al walks quietly to pick it up. When she does, a voice growls at her, "You've been bad," before erupting into flames and melting into the wall. Terry says they have to close the gate, and Al can't believe they were serious about the demon stuff. Glenn says the spells are in the basement, and the five of them walk carefully downstairs. As Glenn shines his flashlight on a family photo, it shows the family dead and bloodied, except for Glenn, who is smiling like normal. The five of them reach the basement, where they find the sacrifice book under a table. But when Terry opens the book, it bursts into flames, and Glenn says they need to find a Bible immediately. Al opens a Bible, and her friends open to a passage, and the five walk outside to the gate. Suddenly, Al's friends turn back to the house as the three press on slowly and cautiously. When they arrive at the gate, they discover it's glowing, and they hear shrieking coming from the depths. Suddenly, thunder booms overhead as Terry reads from the Bible. The wood, meanwhile, pops up and down and begins to fall into the hole. Then, as Terry reads further, gas begins escaping from the hole. Suddenly, the gas reverses course and is sucked into the gate, and Terry says it's working. Glenn says he can still hear the demons as Terry inches towards the hole, before falling in completely. With Terry at the bottom, a small demon walks over, and another walks over and bites Terry in the leg. Suddenly, a third demon appears behind him and bites him on the shoulder. Terry scrambles up the rock walls as demons pull at his feet. He fights back, kicking and stomping them until they let him go. Meanwhile, Glenn grabs rope and lowers it to Terry, who is working his way up the hole. Glenn, meanwhile, reads from the Bible as Terry yells at him to stop. Terry finally makes it to the top, and Al and Glenn pull as the gate starts to close on Terry. In the nick of time, Terry makes it out and throws the Bible into the hole, causing a small explosion and sending the three flying back. They then stand up, see the gate is closed, and cheer before running into the house. Al walks into the house and calls out for her friends, who are hiding and terrified. Glenn says the ritual worked, but as he stares at the front door, he realizes it's open, and that he didn't do it. Al walks towards it, and Eric and two friends burst out of a closet door. Al asks them all to leave, and the three are left alone in the house. And this is the end of Act 2. Alright, so Act 2 has way more action and pits Al, Glenn, and Terry against the tiny demons that are dying to burst out of the gate. You know, this movie is 38 years old, right? And I've said it in previous episodes that practical effects and stop-motion animation hold up so much better than CGI. This movie is proof positive of that. The scenes with the demons, the scene with the phone bursting into flames and then melting on the wall, really terrific. I realize that some folks complain that it looks cheesy, but have you seen really bad CGI in modern movies? It is really a night and day difference, and you can tell. Also, the scares in this movie aren't going to make you pull up the covers, but the underlying concept of the film is pretty scary. I mean, think of it this way. How would you react if a portal to hell opened up in your backyard? Exactly. Let's keep going to Act 3. Act 3 opens with Al and Glenn lamenting that his parents are going to be upset when they get home. Al suggests they clean up and get some sleep, and Glenn instead says they should watch some television. He tells Al that she's a great babysitter. Downstairs, Glenn messes with the geode and tosses it to Terry, who misses it. When he picks it up, a body suddenly falls out of the wall and onto the floor. Glenn and Terry walk slowly to it, when suddenly it opens its eyes, grabs Terry, and steps through the wall. It picks up Terry and carries him into the wall as he screams for Glenn. Glenn runs over, but the wall is now closed up in its place, leaving Glenn behind, and Terry somewhere in another realm. Glenn runs for Al, but finds strange markings on the wall heading up the stairs. They seem to be written in blood. As Glenn struggles up the stairs, Al sees the body that took Terry staring at her in the mirror. She looks back and sees no one, except it's still there. She lets Glenn into the room, and suddenly the dead body steps through the mirror. Al tries to fight back, and the body stumbles forward, breaking up and turning into small demons that stare up at the two of them. They leave her room, and Glenn tells her what happened with Terry. He says Terry is the first human sacrifice. Al then tells Glenn to get the shotgun as she struggles with the door. He runs to the closet, and as he searches, Terry pops out of a corner and bites Glenn on the hand. Glenn struggles against Terry as Al struggles against the door. Al then runs downstairs and stabs Terry in the eye with the doll, causing him to slip away and freeing Glenn. Suddenly, they see a small demon on the upstairs landing. They close the downstairs closet and load the shotgun as the demons arrive at the door, their silhouettes threatening from outside. Suddenly, they disappear, and Glenn and Al are left in the closet by themselves. Then, from behind them, the dead body walks up, grabbing Al by the leg. Glenn fights back, but is tossed aside easily. Al is then dragged into the gate by the dead body, leaving Glenn to fend for himself. The second human sacrifice has been made. As thunder cracks overhead, Glenn realizes the thunderbolt can help him fight back. But then the floorboards start to creak and bounce, and a huge gate opens up in Glenn's living room. As he backs away, the house shakes and starts to partially collapse. Glenn runs to his room to grab the thunderbolt, but he struggles to light it with the heavy wind in his room. Behind him, he hears the demons growling and squealing as they emerge from the gate. Suddenly, a massive demon lord rises slowly from the gate, and as Glenn is pulled towards the doorway, it rises high above him. The two face off as Glenn holds the thunderbolt in his arms. Glenn tries to slip away, but is grabbed by the demon lord, who touches Glenn's head as he pleads. The demon lets him go and descends into the hole. Glenn then looks at his hand, and to his horror, finds a third eye in his palm. The house is now quiet, and Glenn moves back into his room. He walks to the window and discovers the gate is now ejecting demons into the sky. It's literally hell on earth. Glenn crumbles to the floor sobbing, and he yells for the demons to come back and take him instead. He looks down at his palm, sees the third eye, then he grabs a shard of glass and stabs the eye, causing the gate to expel demons faster than before. Under his bed, Glenn finds a rocket launch system. His only hope is to light the thunderbolt. With furniture flying all around, the rocket falls to the downstairs portion of the house. Glenn, hearing Al cry for help, maneuvers his way downstairs and grabs the launch system in hand. He quickly opens it and connects it to the thunderbolt. Except it doesn't work. It's missing 2 D batteries. He unscrews his flashlight and places the batteries into the launch system. And just as he sets it up, the demon lord bursts from the hole and spots Glenn. Finalizing his preparation, Glenn screams, "Happy birthday, Al," and launches the rocket, straight into the chest of the demon lord, who screeches and grabs Glenn before exploding. The blast sends Glenn out of the house, and he watches as fireworks fill the night sky. As the sun rises, he walks back to the house to find it nearly destroyed. Suddenly, he hears scratching from the closet, and Angus walks out, very much alive. He's followed by Al and Terry. The three embrace and walk outside as the camera pans out with triumphant music playing. The camera then pans to the sky before fading to black. And the gate has come to an end. Okay, so obviously I have a lot of thoughts. Act 3 was by far the most action-packed and horror-filled portion of the movie. But to explore it in better detail, let's hop into the second half of the show, where I chat with a very special guest, Josh Bell. All right, so I'm going to stop talking now. You guys have heard me over and over again about this movie. The Gate, I actually have with me a super special guest, Josh Bell. He's the host of, well, a lot of shows. And Josh and I have had, I've guested on a few of his shows. He's guested on a few of mine. And we go back about a year or so now.
Yeah.
He is the host of the terrific shows Real Talk Horror, Couch Critics, and just fantastic guy to talk to. Maybe the best podcast voice in the game, which you're going to hear here in a second. But Josh, introduce yourself to our listeners. Tell us who you are.
Yeah. Well, like you said, I'm Josh. I don't know about the podcast voice because my wife tells me all the time to shut up. So I know that not everyone likes to hear it. I've been podcasting for 2.5 years now. Like Will said, I got Real Talk Horror, Real Talk Grimm, which is not so much movies, and it's me talking about Grimm's fairy tales. And then the horror edition also branched out. We have a live show, myself and Mika G of Cinematic Nightmares. We do every Wednesday night on YouTube. We do a live show called Wednesday Night Frights. And my hetero life mate, longtime partner Dave, and I, friends for 30 years, we sit and chit chat on Couch Critics and bring in special guests from time to time. But we just talk about anything entertainment and whatever makes us laugh. So, yeah. But I am a horror junkie. I love horror. It's my comfort genre. So I love talking about horror.
It's weird, right? That horror movies, the things that are designed to scare the shit out of us, are comfort movies. I mean, for me too. Yeah. You know, if I'm cleaning or I'm doing something, there's always a horror movie in the background.
Yeah.
You know,
there's something comforting in the controlled chaos and the controlled fear. It's a safe way to access that feeling, because you can't go. I don't want to go out to some war region. I don't want to go see real violence. But to experience it in a controlled, safe space is I think therapeutic for me.
Yeah, agreed. It's like I could feel all these feelings while I'm watching a movie, and then I can go mow my lawn when I'm done, or I can go run to the grocery store and pick up dinner stuff, or go out with my wife and have a nice cup of coffee. Right? So
exactly.
It's I'm definitely there. So as part of, this is a new format for the show, and so with the interview portion of this, I always tell the special guests they can choose the horror movie we discuss. Yeah. Which I think just sort of adds to the fun, right? Like, sure, it's one thing for me to say, we're talking about this movie, and you being like, well, okay. It's another thing for me to say, hey, you're the guest, you pick the movie, and I will watch it, and we'll talk. And Josh picked one of my childhood nostalgia movies, The Gate, featuring an uber young Stephen Dorff in the lead role. Guys, this movie is the cheesiest of the cheeses of 1980s horror.
So good.
it might even be, I think I would even consider it maybe a sort of like gateway horror movie for folks who like horror, or maybe are on the fence about horror, not sure where to start. I would definitely include this in a short list of start here. It's creepy enough to get under your skin, but not so scared that you won't walk up the stairs at night. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's exactly why I picked this movie, because this is the one that I kind of started, one of the handful that I started my kids on when they were younger. It's one of the few horror movies that my wife won't get absolutely rage and kick me out of the house for watching with her around. But because it deals with some creepy elements. It plays with a lot of things that we'll get into when we actually talk about the movie. But it plays with a lot of things that were prevalent in the 80s. I was, I think, 8 years old when this movie came out, so I've been watching it my entire life. It's it's that perfect kind of gateway right there with like a Monster Squad. This movie, Poltergeist, a little bit. Poltergeist is much scarier, but it's not overly graphic. Even to a lesser extent, Lost Boys would fit in there. Gremlins for sure.
Gremlins.
There are these movies that fit in a time in that early to mid 80s, even late 80s, but the 1980s. But it was horror that was designed to also be inviting to children, getting kids to watch the horror movies, and it fostered a love for me. So it is The Gate is one of my gateways to my love of horror, for sure.
Yes. So it came out, I was definitely a toddler when it came out, 3 or 4 years old. But I remember watching it in the early 90s. I was, 7, 8, 9 years old at that point. And it wasn't the first horror movie that I'd seen at that point, but it quickly became one of my favorites. And I think it was because it was accessible for a kid, right?
Yes.
It's really a group of preteens and teens who are trying to figure out how to close the portal to hell that they opened by mistake.
Yeah.
It feels like contextually the movie came out right in the thick of the Satanic Panic, right?
That's 100%.
Where the whole country was sort of enraptured in all the wrong ways by this conspiracy that there were satanic cults and child sacrificing cults that were running rampant and operating in daycares. People went to jail over this stuff. It was, and yet, despite that, there was no evidence to prove that satanic anything was going around. But I also remember, Josh, and maybe you do as well, as a young kid in the late 80s, early 90s, the big thing was like Dungeons and Dragons. You're going to open portals to hell.
Yeah, you're inviting this into your home. Don't play with the board. You're inviting it into your home. That's this movie. Similar to the 1980s Trick or Treat, not the amazing one, but Trick or Treat, when they really dealt with some heavy themes from that Satanic Panic, because in this movie it's the records played backwards, and because Terry is this metalhead, because he becomes a metalhead because of the loss of his mother, and that's kind of where he finds his solace. But then they find the key to closing the gate through listening to this heavy metal record backwards and what they have to say. So they really lean into this whole idea of the Satanic Panic, and they're going to play on it. And in a campy way, looking at it now, almost 40 years later, looking backwards, it almost, because of the campiness, now plays almost like a satire against what that was. It almost is making fun of it. I don't know that that's what it meant in its day. I think they were just saying, hey, that's what people are afraid of. Let's do this. But for me, it reads that way now.
Yeah. It's interesting. You mentioned the I guess we call it in the technical sense, right? Like phonetic reversal or backmasking, right? Yes. Playing music backwards and finding these alleged, hidden messages.
Paul is dead.
Paul is dead. That's right. And I remember early on when I first launched the Red Tree House in 2023, I think within the first 5 episodes, I did a phonetic reversal episode with 7 or 8 examples of what this is. And I'll be honest, this is 100% me. Whether backmasking is a real thing or not, whether artists are actually hiding satanic messages or not, the playing music backwards and hearing language backwards scares the hell out of me.
It definitely,
it sends a chill down my back.
It it's the sound that I imagine if I were going to make a movie and I needed a demonic voice.
Oh, 100%.
That is that's the sound that I would hear in my head. Is that is the way that the weird,
man,
that backwards speaking, that backmasking. That's what I hear in my head. But not to go down psychological avenues. That's your field, not mine. But when you play a record backwards, I can almost tell you what you're going to hear, and your mind will trick you into hearing that. If I tell you in advance, so there a lot of it, like none of it's real. You can hear whatever you want to hear and put that on ourselves. So I don't really believe. Did someone somewhere try to do it? Sure. I guarantee you somebody did. But the Beatles and Ozzy Osbourne, they weren't hiding any of these messages in their albums. I really don't believe that. Ozzy was too busy doing drugs and making amazing music to care what was on it backwards. But yeah, and you've talked about it before, and I've mentioned it on my shows that in the 80s there was this thing about it's 10 o'clock. Do you know where your kids are at?
Oh man.
The Gen X often jokes now that those came on because parents didn't care and they just kicked us out. And that's when, it was really about Satanic Panic. They thought once it got dark, that's when your kid was going to get taken and sacrificed to Satan. So that all of that was happening, and it was led by a lot of people in and adjacent to politics. And that's the world that we were living in when this movie came out.
Yeah. I mean, you can imagine the fear of, parents and even kids, right? Mm-hmm. Where it's like, you go to bed at night, you tuck your kids in at night and you go to your room. And the fear was that it wasn't that your kids were going to wander out of the house. It's that someone was going to swoop in and snatch them up.
Yes.
Right. And so there was this strange confluence of things within the culture that sort of came together all at once. And it was a big ball of shit, guys. Like
there's no reality to it at all.
Not at all. We're really dealing with just overactive imaginations that sort of seeped out into the real world and had real life consequences. A side note, I covered the Satanic Panic on the Red Treehouse, but in 2 episodes. But I think there's an even better treatment, a short treatment of the Satanic Panic. I'm going to give you a podcast recommendation.
Oh, do it.
Because I think Gene and Catherine of Ice Cream, You Scream podcast do a fantastic job. I think it's episode 29 and episode 29.5 of the Ice Cream, You Scream podcast. They cover the Satanic Panic. They cover Michelle Remembers, which was a controversial book. All these things, they do it they're fantastic. So give that one a listen if you're not super familiar with the context of the 80s, the Satanic Panic, what it was about, why it was such a big deal. Definitely listen to them. Right. You can also listen to me, but you're listening to me now, so fuck that guy.
No, but you and I were both kids, so we intellectually now looking back, we can grasp the whole, the what all the Satanic Panic encompassed, but I don't have any true personal memory.
I don't either.
Fear. My parents didn't put that on me. I know it was there because I remember bits and pieces of it. I remember it's 10 o'clock. Do you know where your kids are at?
Yeah.
Usually by then I was already in the house because we were a lights on inside family at the time. But most of what I know about it is what I've read and what I've looked into and what I've watched. So I didn't. Yes, I lived through it, but it wasn't ever on my radar. And I was
it definitely wasn't.
Kid, so
it definitely wasn't on my radar as a kid either. It was more like I just knew I wasn't allowed to play certain like Sega Genesis games. I wasn't allowed to. I remember my dad having a childhood friend come over. I mean, I was a kid, and he brought a D&D box, and we never saw that friend again.
Oh,
it was like little snapshots of a memory here and there. But as far as the actual feel, like I walked to school by myself. We walked with friends, and like we lived our normal life in New York City.
And I grew up in Southern California, just outside of LA, and we rode our bikes everywhere, anywhere we wanted, and all our parents knew was that we'd be back when it got dark. It wasn't, hey, Mom, I'm going to this place. It was, Hey,
Right.
Mom, I'll be back tonight.
Yeah. And growing up in the city, it's obviously different than a rural or even a suburban like environment, right? So on a city block, you have 750 people who live on that block. They know you. They know where you are. They know what you do. Like your patterns as kids are what they are.
Absolutely.
And I had, other parents yell at us because we were being assholes. Or, asking us if we were okay because like things seemed out of sorts. So it was a real situation for me growing up where if I went out, there were other eyes, watching eyes and listening ears.
Yes.
Just to sort of keep an eye and, like attention to the situation. And so we just were sort of insulated at that age.
Right.
And just lived. But it was a real hysteria. And I think for me with The Gate, I appreciate that the movie almost now feels like it's a tongue-in-cheek sort of like hearkening back, right? Like portrayal of that era. Like this, it's so outlandish and so like, no way, that it couldn't have been unintentional. Like this had to have been an intentional, almost satire of it.
They're definitely playing on it. And I don't remember who wrote the story, but Tibor Takacs, who directed it, he's definitely showing it as, look how ridiculous this is. Because there's nothing about this movie that leads you to believe that anyone in here thought it was real. They're doing a lot of fun stuff. I love where they're conjuring and stuff to try to raise Glenn up, and he ends up all that stuff is played. That it's played to look silly, and then it ends a little bit scary when Glenn grabs the light and it shatters and everything. The way they play with the dreams and the way kids remember. But something you just said, it just struck me is we grew up on 3,500 miles apart, but in similar things where I had a neighborhood and the neighbors or the people across the street or whatever, they're going to yell at you for acting a fool, or they're going to run out and check on you if you got hurt. We grew up in that kind of environment. That is 100% lacking from this kid's neighborhood. There are no neighbors out. There's a good deal of this that takes place outside. Terry's mom has passed away. Terry's dad is a businessman of some kind. He's never around. So Terry's always on his own. Glenn is 12 years old-ish. Al, his sister's probably 15, and the parents are letting them stay home alone for a weekend. Like there is little adult supervision going on at all. And I just noticed that Michael Nankin wrote the screenplay. And I actually put it in my notes. I didn't read it, but because I pulled it from Wikipedia. According to Michael Nankin, he wrote this based on his personal memories and his nastiest thoughts from childhood. So that's what he was playing on, probably growing up in the 70s, dealing with some of the similar issues. But yeah, there is a not inconspicuous lack of any adult supervision outside of the opening when they agree to let Al and Glenn stay home alone.
Yeah, for sure. And in some ways it's like a preteen teenage dream in a sense. Like we get to do what we want. Parents are gone. No one's here to tell us what to do, when to go to bed. We can eat junk food, all these things, right? It's sort of like Macaulay Culkin at Home Alone, but with demons.
Right. You mentioned those demons, the especially the little demons. They are the ultimate claymation overlay, and
I know, man.
But they are so almost cute but scary, funny.
I know.
Yeah, they're so good.
Because I want to talk about the practical effects, right?
Yes.
We live in an era where it feels like movies are just overloaded with CGI. Mm-hmm. And I think even though, The Gate is almost 40 years old at this point.
Right.
We're still, when you watch it, sure, claymation, stop motion feels a little dated by comparison to what we have nowadays, the technology we have. But there's something still to be said for practical effects and special effects that are present in the room
Right.
versus being overlaid later on.
And that's something that this movie did really well is
so good.
It's a combination of claymation and performers in suits using stop motion and forced perspective.
Yep.
So they're doing a lot of stuff, and that, especially when you're talking about, this is obviously a low budget movie. This was not a big Hollywood film. I think it's actually a Canadian film, but it's a lot smaller. And with a smaller movie, bad CGI dates itself and looks awful and takes away to the movie. But this kind of claymation, forced perspective art that they do here actually ages really well. It looks
I think
as
so.
good now as it does then, because it's tactile and it feels like it is there with the actors. So I think that really holds up well and speaks to why this movie is still one that it's on several streaming platforms, and it's regular viewing for many of us in the of our age at this point, 40 somethings. So because it ages really well.
It really does. I'm not a filmmaker, so I'm just going to talk shit just because that's the only thing I can do, because I don't have any I don't have any personal experience with it.
Because I'm an American and that's what I get to do.
Oh God. Oh man, I almost want to take it back, but I'm gonna leave it in.
We're going with
it. This is
real and off the cuff.
Oh man, so there's a real part of me that if I had like my filmmaking druthers, because like I'm a filmmaker, I would, in my brain right now, would say, if I have $100,000 to work with, which is no money, right, in filmmaking, I would not mind putting a significant portion of that towards practical effects and the actual purpose of filmmaking, right? Like lighting and shadows and sort of, creating the space rather than just forcing. So like, I'll give you an example. And I know a lot of people loved it because it was sort of the capstone to the series, but I really did not like the most recent Conjuring movie. I think it was, and I really didn't like the third one, The Devil Made Me Do It. I think it was because the CGI just felt forced. It felt like it was super noticeable when it happened, and so it was like, whoa, wait a minute.
Yeah.
It took me out of the immersive experience, and I feel like practical effects, makeup, lighting, shadows, sound, right? Sound engineering, they create that immersive experience for the viewer to step into the portal you've created.
Right, absolutely.
And I think The Gate does a really terrific job of creating that portal, right? Like, for example, the scene where Glenn is hanging he's hanging by, when he's hanging down into the hole. Yes. It's like the cramped space, right? The claustrophobia of it, the little demons that are chomping at his feet and like, trying to pull him down. Trying to bring him in. You feel that. Yeah. And then at the end, when the big demon comes up and it's, it's like busting through the floors of the house, and it's, they can't make their way into the, to the upstairs because it's cut the stair. Like you feel that sense of place. Yeah. You feel that sense of like, oh, and so much of that is special effects and lighting and sound.
Right. And whether you love them or hate them, the Terrifier movies show that the first Terrifier one, the first full Art the Clown movie, cost $35,000 to make. It is extremely realistic because it's all done in real life with real people and all of this. Yeah. Terrifier 2, which actually has a story now. Terrifier 1, there's no story. No. Terrifier 2, they actually try to, but that's $250,000. I don't think the kills are any better. I don't think you're getting any more out of it. But that's just to get a story in there. That's where the cost just skyrockets. But it does show you what you can do when it's practical effects. It costs less and it looks better because it's tactile. It's real. You can feel Glenn holding on to not fall into that hole. And just from a story perspective, the first time you were introduced to that hole and they find the giant geode down there, everything makes sense in how it happens. They find the geode. There's the wood out there. Glenn gets the splinter prick that causes him to bleed just a little bit. We've all had a bad splinter. It hurts. You bleed.
Yeah.
Now the blood got in the hole, which we know will affect us in a few minutes when they open it. And then the rewrite boards. Like, the story is well crafted and connected that all of this stuff works together. It makes sense. Nothing is shoehorned in.
Right.
For a movie that's 85 minutes long, they do a really good job of making all of this stuff feel natural consequences to natural actions in just unnatural circumstances. So I do want to highlight that the story does all of those things well. Everything they do makes sense and not just from the perspective of a 12-year-old kid. It makes sense because this is the order that humans do things. And I think that works really well for this movie.
Yeah. Unfortunately, even when, obviously I gave a trigger warning at the start of the episode before the summary, but even when Angus dies, the dog, and they, what do you do when a pet dies in your home? You bury it in the backyard. But if you've got a hole that's already pre-dug, what are you going to do most likely?
Oh, that's easy. Hey, that's what we're going to do.
Hey, and so they tossed the dog into the hole as sort of this almost like pseudo-sacrifice.
Yeah. And the reactions of Glenn and Al, they are perfect. Glenn is, I want to call mom. I want to call mom. Al's like, no, we can handle this. We got to show our parent. Like, those are real reactions of these kids when something like this happens. Yeah. Because and they let you know that the dog is old. They say it, that the dog was old. So it's not like it was something that was wholly unexpected.
Right.
It still hurts, and it's absolutely terrible for anybody to have to deal with, because I often like my pets better than I like most of the people around me. I get that. I get that feeling.
Not untrue.
I get that feeling. I always say I hate my animals because they make me love them like they're people. They are an important part. I get irritated with them like I get irritated with my kids, but when they come to get pet on, I love it and I want them near me. So Glenn's reaction and Al's reaction are 100% accurate to how I believe my kids would have reacted if I left them home alone and the dog died. Like, so everything just kind of fits. It works really well.
Yeah, I definitely feel that sense of sort of natural progression of things. And it's interesting because when you watch the movie, it has a low budget vibe to it. It just sort of feels like, the movie's really, the place of the movie is one location. It doesn't take place across town. It doesn't span geography. It's one house, one backyard, and everything happens within that space. And really over the span of maybe 2 or 3 days at the most, right? A weekend. Yeah. And yet the movie, I watched it 3 days ago. Yep. Still so damn good. Right. Yeah. One of the best 80s horror movies that I've seen.
Yeah. It's so you and I have talked numerous times on social media and on shows about how our top 25 horror movies is made up. I'm talking about top 25 horror movies that I still get joy out of rewatching. The Gate is consistently in that top 15-ish range. Yeah. Because I still get joy out of watching it, because there is an earnestness and a reality to the kids, the tactile nature of those characters. It fits into this world where I was I guess I'm still only a couple years younger than Stephen Dorff. We are of a similar age. Like, the emotions that he deals with are the emotions I dealt with at that age. And so everything just kind of fits, and it gives you, it's nostalgia, but it's done for a movie that cost $6 million to make. It is all done super, super well. Yeah, agreed. There's no big names in here. Stephen Dorff becomes a medium name. He becomes a big name, but nobody in here at the time. It grossed $13.5 million, which at the time, anything that doubled its budget, especially something small like this, is going to warrant a sequel. Don't watch the sequel. It's not worth it.
Sequel's bad.
It's real bad. It's just it's the continued adventures of Terry. And I like Terry. Terry has this whole nerd vibe that trying to be a nerd who tries to be edgy. And I get it. I'm a nerd and I try to be edgy with my content. I get that. But I didn't need a whole story just about him. Stay away from the Gate 2 trespassers. But
it kind of felt like Terry's character reminded me of another 80s movie. If you remember Fright Night, Evil in Fright Night.
Yes.
Just sort of this like quirky best friend, hanger on a little bit, but like super endearing to watch.
Absolutely.
You're sort of sad for him as you watch the movie. Terry definitely, but you're right. The sequel, The Gate 2 is, guys, it's really not worth it's not worth it.
We were talking about I was talking about sequels on an episode that comes out in November for Couch Critics. And we're talking about different sequels and stuff. And I categorize sequels in 3 categories. There's a sequel that's as good or better than the original. You think Empire Strikes Back, those kinds of things. You have your sequels that are good and do their own thing, like a Back to the Future 2. It doesn't quite live up to the original, but it's a decent movie. But then there are sequels that are so bad it almost ruins the first movie for you.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where The Gate 2 kind of lives, real close to ruining where it started.
I'm with you.
It doesn't help. But that's enough crapping on a movie that we're not even talking about.
Well, I want to take one giant shit on one direct sequel.
Okay.
And I did it on TikTok maybe about a month ago. And I got like this 50-50 split of people that were like, yeah, this was bad. And other people who were like, you're a fucking idiot. Because that's how TikTok goes, right? Yeah. You're either like the best creator in the world or you're like the worst scum of the earth, like human being kind of thing. And I posted a video that said, look, for me, Halloween 2 from 1981, one of the worst direct sequels ever made in a horror franchise. And it's only because of the continuity. They tried to make Halloween 2 follow minutes after the end of the original Halloween. And that was, to me, that was a huge misstep.
Yes.
For a lot of reasons. And I highlighted some of those reasons. And folks were like, this was the best. This was better than Halloween, which is, guys.
No, it's not better.
It's not.
You can like it all you want. It is not better.
Not even close. Oh, listen, I'm a firm believer in like, you like what you like.
Yes.
Like super democratic in that sense. Yes. Super like
please
forgiving.
Yes.
But there are some things that are just like, bro, that's wild. Yeah. That's a wild idea.
Way off. Yeah.
No one agrees with that. Critics and like fans alike really like that statement is either rage bait and you're just trying to goad a response from me, or I think maybe Halloween 2 is the only horror movie you've ever seen.
Right. Yeah. So I definitely don't hate it nearly as much as, or I don't dislike it as much as you do, because I like the idea of it. But my biggest question is, John Carpenter wrote it. That means you had access to John Carpenter. Could you not borrow the footage in a Friday the 13th way?
Literally
borrow the ending footage. And
that's it.
Like, there are little things you absolutely could, or just had a better script supervisor that's doing your continuity checks just for the first day of shooting.
That's all it is.
Just for that first day of shooting.
There's so many continuity errors in the first 2 minutes of the movie that it just takes you completely out of what's happening next, right? Because a lot of what follows after those first 2 minutes is pretty good stuff.
Right.
Still not as good as the first one, but if you take the 78 out of the 80 minutes and that's just the movie, hey, it's great. But those first 2 minutes are so egregious, guys.
Yeah.
It just takes you out of what happens right after. And for me, that's and the irony is that we live in a social media world where the first like 8 seconds of a video are the hook, right? And if it's not good enough, people scroll past.
Right.
Long form content, the first 2 to 3 minutes of a movie are the hook to the rest of it.
Yes.
Right. And so if you greater or lesser to the greater, like that's my argument is that first. Anyway, so I guess I'm going to have to do a Halloween 2 hating episode at some point. I got to find someone who really hates it as much as I do, which I don't know that I will.
So the first time I ever saw Halloween 2 was the same night I saw Halloween for the first time.
Okay.
And I was young. I was 12, 13, I was 13 maybe. And I was not watching for continuity errors.
For sure.
I probably wasn't even paying attention to the first 2 minutes.
For sure. And I think for someone who, because there were a lot of folks who commented, oh, I watched Halloween 1 and then Halloween 2 back to back for the first time ever. Yeah. I do have a ton of empathy for that because I watched Halloween 1 and then years later I watched Halloween 2 or sometime after.
Yeah.
And so I didn't get that 1 to 2 experience back to back, right?
Absolutely.
So there is a part of me that respects that for sure.
There is, and there's a lot to be said about your first time seeing a movie. Mm-hmm. If you saw it when you were in an impressionable state of mind, if you were in an open state, if you were happy and like I always say, fat, happy, and full of food, I'm going to like something a lot better.
For sure.
And if life is stressing me out, that's why we have comfort movies, right?
For sure.
That's why I watch The Gate, because life sucks and I need something just to kind of... But if you're in a good place, and I was watching it with high school friends, we were like freshmen in high school. We were vegging out, watching movies. That's when I watched these. That makes me like it better because the company I was in, it was a happy memory, and all of those
for sure
linked together. So the first time you see a movie goes a long way, especially with a movie that is so polarizing. Generally speaking, if you don't like Goonies, I don't think we can be friends. But Goonies for me is that movie that you just have to watch it, and it doesn't matter how you're feeling. That's a good movie.
Yep, agreed.
But how? Yeah,
I think I definitely have movies like that for sure.
Yeah,
Josh, I wanted to get your thoughts. Yeah. Because I went on the rabbit trail because my mind sometimes wanders a lot.
Always.
But with The Gate, right? It's there are horror movies that nowadays we have like elevated horror or existential horror. We have these sort of maybe harder to grasp types of horror. The Gate is not that. The Gate is...
It's not.
It's gateway horror, but it's just entertaining horror, right?
Yeah.
It's 90 minutes of, just fun. There's not a whole lot... Maybe there's not a whole lot of depth to it, but I wonder, though, if there are a couple of themes we can pull out from the movie.
Yeah, absolutely. I did. So obviously the one that we've highlighted throughout this whole thing is the cultural anxieties of the 80s. Obviously, heavy metal, occult panic, all of that. But beyond that, in more of in a story frame, in a character frame, it deals with a lot of the idea, the loss of innocence, coming of age, grief and guilt, that kind of stuff. Because you have the loss of innocence. All of a sudden, there's these evil things happening, and these kids have to grow up really fast. Coming of age, you have Al finding herself as a young woman now. She's no longer a kid. She's liking boys. She wants to be with her friends. You're dealing with that. And the idea of sibling responsibility and trying to help out when the dog does die. You have a lot of grief comes in with Terry because especially in that dream sequence with his mom. So there are a lot of little things that are happening underneath. You have the symbolic acts of why don't the parents trust Glenn? Well, Glenn shot his rocket up and almost burned the house down. Right. So he's dealing with those kind of responsibilities. Like, I want to do this again, and my friend is telling me I should do it, but I remember the last time I did it. So it's dealing with some real themes. It's never heavy-handed. It's not forcing any issues on us, but they're there.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you. I think the one thing that I really noticed this most recent watch was the pretty strong undercurrent of grief, right? Yeah. You have Terry losing his mom, but then also in a different way, sort of losing his dad, right? Dad is left a note on the fridge, and you can sense his sadness when he sees that note, and he just I guess it's just you and me, bud, right? There's just this real palpable sense of sadness there.
Yeah. And that's the same thing with Glenn is he's already dealing with some guilt because of the issue with the rocket burning down in the house. And then they add grief on top of that with his dog passing. And now he's dealing with grief and guilt and just wanting the comfort of his mom. And so that's adding on to it. And the loss of, and he's losing his sister who was his best friend. They did the rockets together because she threw her big rocket away. Like there's a lot of little things that are happening that on a first watch, you may not necessarily notice, but like we've watched this movie even in the last few days more times than most people will watch it. So you start to pick up on all these other things that are going on.
For sure.
And there's a lot building up that Glenn and Terry specifically, Al to a slightly lesser extent, but those three are dealing with a lot of things. Al is slightly more superficial because she's the secondary character, but Glenn and Terry's are very upfront and you know what they're dealing with.
You know, there's always a part of me that wants to dig so deep that you miss the point.
Yeah.
It's like one of my favorite things to do is like, how far can I take this before I'm like way off base here, right? So for me, it's almost like, all right, so I'm going to give you here's my bullshit philosopher. That's what I'm going to call myself, the bullshit philosopher. Take on this movie that it's really a story about grief. And the demons are metaphors for the inner demons that these young adult teens, preteens are dealing with. Terry with grief and, Glenn with guilt and, Al with angst, right? They've got these things, these inner demons that they're working out, and the demons are just representative that come out of the whole are representative of that. But at the same time, I think, okay, so that's my bullshit philosopher statement. But I think too, there's a real part of it where the movie does sort of lead us towards this real life concept of overcoming your fears and navigating your circumstances with as much courage as you can muster in a given context, right? Because we do see them fight back. We do see them, stand their ground, 10 toes down, shoulders back and push back against whatever evil is pressing in on them,
Yeah. The idea that these kids are forced to take responsibility for the results of their actions, whether they had any intention for these actions to come up. They had no idea idea that their actions could open a gate to hell.
Right.
But that happened and they form this, they fortify with each other. Al comes to their aid. Glenn, Terry, and Al then protect everybody. They take responsibility for the things that they've done. Al for abandoning her brother. She comes up tight with him. They are absolutely, it is, I don't know that it's necessarily bullshit. It's right there. You don't have to think too deep into the movie to see it. It's right there. I don't think you noticed it the first time because it's a low budget kids horror movie.
Yep.
But it's right there. It doesn't take too much to read all of that on there.
I feel
I don't have to play the
better.
record. I don't have to play the record backwards to put that on. I can just let it.
I feel infinitely better. Although there's a small part of me that feels like, damn, the bullshit philosopher would have been a really good TikTok.
Right.
Now I got to come up.
Right. I've thought about doing a secondary TikTok channel that's just one guy's opinion, and it's just. And it's never me. It's my camera. It's me talking, but it's my camera just taking pictures of the skyline and me saying all of the garbage that I think when I see. Yeah. Things. So
it's faceless. It's like when we've recently watched the original Halloween with the kids, maybe about a month ago, and I love horror. My wife doesn't love horror too much.
Yeah.
And so I sort of err on the side of caution when it comes to the kids, like. How much is too much? What do we let them watch? But they're all firmly entrenched in their teenage years now. So trying to introduce them to some, OG classics, right?
Yeah.
So we watched Halloween and my kids are all like, well, what's it about? And I was like, well, it's really a story about perseverance. It's about a guy who has a goal and he stops at nothing. And it's just a movie about endurance and patience and perseverance and going after what you want. And I framed it in this almost inspirational movie kind of way. And I was like, holy shit.
But it's
there's a lot of horror movies that we could probably spin this way.
Well, yeah. Freddy Krueger he's just a guy who was like mob justice, and he wants to get back at the people that wronged him. We can ignore everything he did terrible, but that's
right. If they didn't introduce that pedophile storyline,
right,
it could completely be hey, this guy was an outcast, a weird guy that
he was
misunderstood, right? And you almost feel bad you would almost feel bad until you learn, like, oh fuck, like this guy was
awful.
Yeah,
but from my English background there, so we all know what the hero's story, the hero's arc. And everybody is the hero of their own story, which means even the villain is the hero of their story. If we tell, Disney's done a pretty good job with this, with Maleficent, things like, and Cruella, showing the hero's journey through the eyes of the quote unquote villain, because the villain thinks that they're justified and right in what they're doing for whatever that reason is, as whacked out as it could be, as crazy as Michael Myers coming after whatever timeline you want to follow, whether it's a curse on him or his sister or whatever. He's got his hero's journey is, I've got to get back and I've got to defeat this thing back in my hometown, whatever the purpose is. So there's the hero's journey is, you are always the hero, whether you're the good guy or the bad guy. You're the hero of your story, which
can take some really wild wild turns.
Wicked is another one that
Wicked,
that. It's the villain's version. So all of a sudden the villain is justified in everything that they do, because that's how they see the events.
Man, well, guys, we are we've done the damn thing. So so The Gate, if you haven't seen it, last I checked, so I try to collect as much physical media as I can.
Sure.
Just because internet goes out here way too often for me to not have physical copies of movies.
And for those of you that don't know, the digital media that you quote unquote own through
is just a license.
If Fandango Now or Amazon loses that license, you lose access to that movie.
Yep.
So I don't want to get up on the soapbox and say go buy all your physical media, but if you truly love a film, go get the physical media.
Go get it.
Go get it.
Go get it.
Use and I your ordered streaming services. Watch your movies that way. But if you love something and you really want to be able to watch it whenever you want, the only way to guarantee that.
For sure.
All right, I'll get off my soapbox. Go ahead.
No. I'm going to climb back on for a half second, because I feel like, especially when we're talking about older movies, right?
Yes.
60s, 70s, 80s, even some 90s movies.
Oh, yeah.
There is really something to be said for watching it the way that it was filmed. Right. So like, whether that's because like I have some VHS. If I'm watching if I'm watching The Evil Dead, I'm going to throw on the VHS. Yeah. If I'm watching The Exorcist, I want to watch the standard definition DVD, just because it sort of brings me back again. The immersive experience being what it is versus 4K.
I have the OG clamshell VHS Exorcist.
And there's something about with the plastic box.
With the plastic box, yeah. There's something about watching a movie like that, a Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Evil Dead. These are movies that play really well when they are not pristine and crisp.
Oh,
because they give that voyeuristic, I'm outsider looking in on something I shouldn't be seeing kind of vibe that you lose in a 4K upgrade. 4K is 100%. Amazing. Absolutely. Get your 4Ks. Nightmare on Elm Street absolutely benefits from that, because it is about being in a dream, and what's more dream-like than being perfectly crisp and clear.
Right.
Like those things work, but there are some things that, just like
I know,
some music plays better on vinyl.
I know.
So
it's worth, if you can spare the extra cash to purchase a DVD or even a VHS if you can find them, because I know that they're increasingly getting more expensive.
Absolutely.
With collectors and that kind of thing. Yeah. But for me, I watched The Gate on standard DVD, standard definition, and it was fantastic. But I also know that The Gate is streaming right now for free on Tubi.
It is.
In a 1080p. I don't know that it's 4K, but it's definitely a Blu-ray level.
Right.
And that's also, you can watch it for free right now. So if you've never seen it, or if you've Haven't seen it in a while. Definitely take some time.
Yeah.
To give it a watch.
It's also on Amazon Prime Freeview, whatever they're calling it these days. Used to be Freevee, used to be
with the ads.
TV. Yeah, it's free with ads on there also.
And I'm pretty sure I watched The Gate the first time on network television with commercials. We didn't call them ads back then; we called them commercials.
I absolutely would have seen it that way the first time. I wouldn't have watched it. I wouldn't have rented it for a couple more years. But
yeah. Guys, Josh and I are sufficiently dating ourselves.
Yeah, we are.
Clearly in our at least 40s.
Yes. Well,
so
Josh is a grandpa. That's how old Josh is these days.
Oh, Will's got an almost adult daughter who will vote in the next not this election cycle, but the next one.
Yeah.
And
all three of my daughters are of voting age. They actually voted in the last election, so every one of my kids is of that age now.
It's amazing that we don't just stare off into space most days doing nothing, because it's like
I need to get the
life
rocking
passes
chair.
so fast.
I need a rocking chair on the porch and just sit there with my coffee cup, and just talk about these crazy kids.
I know.
Slow down.
Listen, my only piece of advice: I never give or take advice on any sort of media platform, but I'm going to give you one.
Yeah.
Just for the listener. There are long days and short years. Watch good movies.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. I don't remember. There's a podcast out there. It's Middle-Aged Movie Reviews. I actually got to be on their kickoff episode for the month of Halloween. We talked about the OG Frankenstein. But the way that they do their ratings is they don't really rate them. They say, is this movie worth the 90 minutes of your countdown clock, because you only have so many minutes till the end? Is it worth the 70 minutes of your life, or whatever, in this case 85 minutes? And for me, 100%, The Gate is worth that 85 minutes,
for sure,
because I don't have to sit and get lost. It is not like an elevated horror story like a Hereditary, where I actually have to pay attention and pick things up as it goes. I can actually answer a question when my wife asks. I can go get a drink from the fridge or something and not feel like I'm lost, but still have a good time in a movie like this. So
yeah, agreed. If you're looking for a horror scale rating, I would say this one on the scare factor is maybe a 2.5 out of 5.
Yeah,
2.5. It's got some creepy moments.
No, if I was going based solely on scares, 2.5. But based on like my real talk rating scale, I give this a 3 because the enjoyment factor pushes it up. The scare factor is this is the epitome of gateway horror. If you don't know if you like horror, start here, because you're not going to get bombarded with blood, guts, and gore, or any of the other things that come with the 3 Bs. Blood, beasts, and boobs. You're getting a little bit of beasts, but you're not getting the rest. So this is totally that. And because it's a young Stephen Dorff, there's some stuff that. So for me, I give it a 3. Scares is really low, but I give it a 3.
I'll give it a 3 only because the backmasking stuff still freaks me out. And there's enough satanic panic influence in my soul that's like, if you listen to it, you could invite the devil in.
I was going to say, I said earlier that we grew up in it when it was happening, but we don't have a lot of memory from it, but we have the lingering effects of it. It's in there. It's in the subconscious. It's in the things that I enjoy. That's why I liked Mark Price in Trick or Treat, Skippy from Family Ties. I love Trick or Treat, and the idea of Ozzy Osbourne as the preacher. Like, come on, that's gold. Check out Trick or Treat. Guys, if you haven't watched it.
This is it. This is The Gate. Stephen Dorff. Give it a watch, guys. Josh, thank you as always, man. It's always just a great conversation every time we get together.
Yeah, I always have a great time. So
Josh, where can folks find you on the socials?
On the socials, it's at Real Talk on Instagram, Threads, YouTube, and TikTok. I don't really use the others just because it's too much work.
It is too much work. 1 is enough. 2 is a lot. more than
Luckily,
2. Ooh.
Instagram and Threads play very well together. I post on Instagram, and if the message isn't too long, it automatically posts it to Threads for me, so makes it a little easier.
Guys, be sure to follow Josh
Check me.
on all his shows.
Yeah.
Follow, like I say this every time, follow, like, subscribe, leave the 5-star review. They say it doesn't help the algorithm, but it helps the algorithm of a creator's heart. It keeps us going, gives us that boost for the next episode, validating, encouraging. And if you have any critical comments, think twice and then cast them into the ocean where they just sink to the depths, because, creating content is not easy.
And none of us...
It's hard stuff.
It takes too much effort to write something hateful.
It does. It does.
It's just,
why spend your time that way? You could spend your time watching good movies and listening to us back and forth about it. Way better way to spend your time.
Much better. Yep.
Guys, I don't take it for granted that you're listening to One Good Scare. It is always a privilege and an honor to do this. I don't take it for granted. And you guys are awesome. Be sure to follow, like, subscribe, and I will catch you next week on One Good Scare. Take care.